Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and I've got a unique mock draft from one of my community members that asked for this type of style. So we're talking 14 team, 2 quarterback, non-PPR league. So this is a little bit different than what some of my other mock drafts, but I wanted to put this out there because again, if you are in the comments asking away, I will always try to get to you because again, the community is what it makes everything about this. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for asking for this. So let's jump into this one. So as you can see, this is a 14 team, 2 quarterback league. Now, this is a non-PPR, so things are a little bit different. If it was a full PPR, obviously your strategies change. And just like anything else, like a different type of format, like, tight end premium, those things will change how your mock drafts are. Most of you guys are probably drafting this weekend, so I'm super excited for you guys. Of course, if you have questions for your draft, hit me up in the comments. I would love to help you guys out. Now, we didn't go into details of how many players are on this roster. We did talk about some scoring, and then obviously not the exact location of where this community member is. But again, I wanted to get this out there because some of you guys might be in a 14 team league. Maybe you're in a 2 quarterback league. Hopefully this helps you guys out. So I put myself right in the middle. Let's see how this mock draft goes. Now, typically in a 2 quarterback league, quarterbacks are the biggest thing to go after. You might see some players that maybe they'll reach and grab a wide receiver or running back or something like that and then grab a quarterback later because there are some value. In a 14 team league, you're talking at least 28 quarterbacks of a 32 team or 32 league. That's a little tough. You've got to get your quarterbacks early. As much as you want a player like a CeeDee Lamb or a Christian McCaffrey, quarterbacks matter. So had this been all quarterbacks, this probably would have been indifferent. Now, there are probably some league mates of yours that are probably going to grab a player like CeeDee Lamb or Christian McCaffrey, things like that. Now, in a non-PPR league, Christian McCaffrey's value is still really strong because he does get a lot of touchdowns. Now, I'm going to go quarterback here, and I'll grab Lamar Jackson because his rushing ability is such a big impact. He is absolutely going to be the first quarterback I'm going to go. Now, quarterbacks are obviously going to be a really big deal in this one. So when you start to see rosters like Team 12 and Team 13 here that went running backs or wide receivers, that may not be something you're going to normally see. Sometimes these mock drafts aren't always going to go as, I would say, as smart as you would think. Being that the system knows it's a 2 quarterback league, and that's okay. But I want to give you some insight on why I went after certain players. Now, I would love to have gotten Kyler Murray here. He obviously did fall right before me because I think him and Lamar Jackson would be some of the best 2 quarterbacks you can have in a realistic 2 quarterback league just because of that rushing ability. Now, looking what I've got available, you still got some good quarterbacks. You got Jordan Love, Purdy, who's had some success, Tua. I actually am going to reach here. I am going to see and hope that the computer doesn't go after these quarterbacks. In a normal case, if your league mates are starting to do some of these drafts like this, you could probably pull off this risk as well. If they have not, and they're going really quarterback heavy like most of them though, then you got to get a quarterback right here in the second. But I'm going to play this a little different because these teams did not grab a quarterback. There's still some available. I'm going to grab a premier running back or wide receiver here. And looking at the options, I'm going to end up grabbing Saquon Barkley from the Eagles. Even though I do have some hesitation, I do think Jalen Hurts is going to steal some of the red zone, capability that I think Barkley should be able to get, just like we've seen in the past. I think Barkley's availability, in the receiving aspect, as far as receiving yards, rushing yards, even in a non-PPR, is still really strong. So I feel really good about him. Now I've got to get a quarterback here. I'm not going to risk it. In the 3rd round, you have to get your second quarterback. Otherwise, you could pull off a situation where these guys start drafting quarterbacks and now you're stuck with nothing but maybe Derek Carr. I hate to say it. Sorry, Derek Carr. But so in this case, looking at what I've got options, I've got Justin Herbert, Tua, Caleb Williams, things like that. Now, Jaden Daniels is really tempting because of his rushing ability, but I'm going to go Tua because of Tua's really his past. Great last year. He was QB9. Obviously, the year before that was QB 15. He's still in that QB 10 to 15 range because of the weapons he has and the way this offense is built from McDaniels. So I will grab Tua there. Again, Jaden Daniels is a great option. Now, looking at what I've got here, I could grab another quarterback because these guys did not get all of their quarterbacks here to use as trade bait, and of course filling in for bye weeks. Quarterbacks are such a big piece in a 2 QB. I am going to be that guy, and I'm going to grab Jaden Daniels here because I can use him for bye weeks, matchups. Even though I didn't get a receiver or running back, I'm okay with that because now other teams that didn't have their 2 quarterbacks will be scratching and itching trying to get to me, and I'm going to use those guys as some great trade bait. So again, strategy you could think of and use towards your fantasy season. Now that I got 3 quarterbacks, I don't need to go those routes. I'm going to obviously go wide receivers and running backs. Now, I didn't get a premier wide receiver here, but I've got to get Alvin Kamara here just because he is going to get plenty of touchdowns. He is obviously going to get your receiving yards and some rushing yards. If this was PPR, his value is obviously a lot higher, but because it's non-PPR, Kamara still has strong value because Kendra Miller is on IR. Yes, Taysom Hill is there, and he's probably going to steal some red zone touchdowns, but I think Kamara still has the ability to get double digits this season. Now, looking at the way this roster is built, I've got to get my receivers here. Obviously, I've got a tight end and some flex to fill out, and then obviously kicker and defense. Looking at what I've got available, I'm going to stack this with Terry McLaurin because Terry McLaurin, I think, is going to get plenty of targets this way, especially with Dotson now out of Washington. I think he's going to get to that 120 to 130 targets. And McLaurin should get you anywhere from 6 to 8 touchdowns easily, if not even to the double digits. So I like Terry McLaurin as my first wide receiver off the board to pair up with Jaden Daniels if I do start him. And I've got to fill out the rest of this roster with my wide receivers. Now, looking at the options that are available, you've got in receiving, you've got Adunze, Ridley, Rashee Rice, McConkey, some really good options. And I like these guys, but I'm going to go Rashee Rice here because Rashee Rice right now is going to be the number 1 wide receiver for Mahomes. And Mahomes is obviously going to throw the ball plenty. Hollywood Brown's at least out for week 1. That's been validated. He could be out a couple more weeks. Xavier Worthy's got some time to kind of ease himself into this offense. And I know Travis Kelce's still there, but I like Rashee Rice as a second option in this one. I am going to grab another receiver here. I'm a big Keon Coleman fan, but I'm going to go Deontay Johnson because Deontay Johnson should see a lot of targets his way in that Panthers offense. Look, the Panthers right now are going to a new offensive scheme, new head coach, and at least so far in the preseason, I didn't know it's preseason. It doesn't show everything, but what I have seen is the offensive line looks a lot better. They put a lot of money into it. Bryce Young is actually able to read and actually be able to get the ball out, which is fantastic, something he didn't have opportunities to do last season. And Deontay Johnson does lead the league typically in drops, but I feel still really confident in grabbing him because, again, he's my third wide receiver. He's going to get a lot of targets, probably 130 to 140 targets his way. And, again, it's going to get you 5 to 6 touchdowns. And I feel really good about that being as my flex play. I still have a tight end to get, and I still have 5 more bench players before I get my kicker and defense. So looking at what I've got as far as availability, you've got tight end in Dalton Schultz, Freiermuth, Cole Kmet. Now, Kmet's tempting because he is a touchdown machine. Now, Everett is now in Chicago, and that does worry me a little bit because I've seen him get way too many touches in the preseason, and I don't know how this Chicago Bears offense is going to play out. So I do have some concern with Kmet. But you always want to draft the best available player. Even though I may need a tight end, doesn't necessarily mean I need to grab a tight end right now. Just because, again, you could probably get a player like Cole Kmet or Freiermuth a little bit later, and I didn't have to spend too much. So looking at the best options, I'm going to take the risk here in Gus Edwards for the Chargers because Gus Edwards right now is probably going into this season as the RB1. Obviously, Dobbins is there. We're not really sure how he's coming back from his injury. Gus Edwards is a great red zone threat, and I think they're going to need that in the Chargers, offense. Right now, the Chargers offense is going to probably be ran through the rushing aspect and let Herbert obviously be Herbert. And I don't think it's going to be put all on his shoulders, especially with the receiving core it's pretty much decimated compared to where it was last year. So I feel really good about Gus Edwards as a nice option to get me into those red zone touches and, again, red zone touchdowns. So Cole Kmet, Schultz, and Freiermuth did go. I do need to get a tight end, so I got to start looking at some options. Now, looking at the top tight ends that are available, it sounds crazy, but I'm going Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill right now, because of the way, Dennis Allen just glows about him. I think that's the only player Dennis Allen has actually talked good about at all, is going to be a red zone threat. He's going to be utilized in the passing game, the receiving game, rushing game. Taysom Hill's not a bad pickup. I know he's always typically a player that you're going to grab off of waivers, but being in a 14 team league, he's going to be somebody you probably want to draft because he's not going to be there later on. And he fills in my tight end role. He does have the quarterback aspect as well if I ever needed to, which is, hey, who knows? I mean, Derek Carr right now is on the chopping block. There's a good chance he may not play, even though I think Spencer Rattler might end up actually starting the last half of the season. That's just a hunch. But I like the Taysom Hill play there just because of the red zone threat. Now, I've got to fill out 4 more spots of the bench, and then obviously kicker and defense. Now, looking at what I've got available, I've got obviously my 3 running backs. I've got 3 wide receivers and then 3 quarterbacks. I'm going to go one more running back here in Chuba Hubbard because he is going to be the RB1 going into the Panthers season with obviously Jonathan Brooks at least out for 4 weeks. Could be a little bit longer. We'll see how things are. They might even ease him into the season. So Chuba Hubbard at least is an RB1 that I grabbed super late that I could fill in some flex plays, or, maybe I have to start him over Alvin Kamara, depending on the matchup. So again, I like that play there. I almost went with Ben Sinnott just because I think he's going to be another great option, and I could obviously stack him with Jaden Daniels. But again, I don't necessarily need to grab him. I've got obviously a few more spots here. Looking at what I've got to fill out, looking at Rico Dowdle's tempting, even though Dalvin Cook was signed there, I could always go look at wide receivers like Datavian Wicks. We don't know what the Packers are going to do as far as their wide receiver room. I like Darnell Mooney. He's a nice little option. Demario Douglas for the Patriots. So there's definitely some options here when it comes to wide receivers. Of these, I'm going to play the sleeper pick and go in Jalen Polk. I understand that Patriots offense is not somebody, I don't feel really confident with. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson. But Polk has actually looked really good this offseason. He's looked really good at training camp. He's looked good in the preseason. And you've got a nice, savvy quarterback in Brissett starting. We'll see if things change and go to May later on in the season. But right now, Brissett is the starter. I think this is actually a really good thing for Polk. And I'm not 100% banking the fact that Polk's going to be a wide receiver I'm going to put in every single week. But he might have some big games that might actually end up turning up to be, 1 week that he plays 7 catches, with his 80 yards and a touchdown. And now he just put up 14 points in a non-PPR game. That's fantastic. So I like that play there. Looking at quarterbacks, you could still grab another quarterback if I really wanted to, just to be stingy. I don't necessarily need to do that, even though the waiver wire is going to be very, very thin when it comes to the season if there's any injuries. That is why I did grab a third quarterback. I am going to go and grab a backup tight end. Now, looking at the backup tight ends as far as what I have available, Jonnu Smith is a great option. I think he's going to have a really good one. Mike Gesicki, maybe. The Bengals don't typically use a tight end, but I know having him with Burrow, I think it seems tempting. I like Jatavian Sanders, but with them getting Jordan Matthews now converted to tight end, I think he actually ends up being the play. I actually am going to go Theo Johnson for the Giants. Look, Theo Johnson might end up being the starter. I think it's still going to be Bellinger at first, but we'll see how things change because Theo Johnson is a very athletic tight end, and that might just help him just squeak right in. The Giants are going to put into every option they can to give Daniel Jones at least a fighting chance this season. So, again, Theo Johnson, I don't feel like I'm risking out too much. Now, kickers are still available. Obviously, defenses are still available. I can grab those late. I'm not going to grab them there. I have one more depth piece. And looking at the depth pieces here, again, players that you have might have some good upside. I'm actually going to go Rashad Bateman. This is the last year. I swear it's the last year I'm going to talk about him. But Bateman has a chance to actually end up maybe turning it around. Kind of like Nico Collins. Everyone forgets that Nico Collins was a player that people were almost done with. And then all of a sudden, bam, he became a premier wide receiver last season. So I'm going to take that there. Now I'm going to go defense. I'm going to grab the Cleveland Browns because the Browns are a top-notch defense. I'd rather grab them before a kicker, even though there's still plenty of good kickers available. But the Cleveland Browns have had a really good success. Myles Garrett, Ward. I mean, there's so many great options in that defense, so I'll grab them. And then obviously grabbing my kicker, looking at the options available, you've got the Miami kicker in Sanders, Bass, Fairbairn. I'm going to grab Fairbairn because he's a very, very good kicker and a really high-powered Houston Texans offense that are going to get the team down the field and get them into the red zone. So I really feel good about that one. All right, so that is my 14-team, 2-quarterback, non-PPR mock draft. Again, I will try to get out these mock drafts if possible. I know most people are probably drafting this weekend, so if I can't get to a video to you guys, I apologize, but hit me up in the comments down below for your draft. I'd love to help you guys get some insight. Feel free. Again, that's what I'm here for. You can always follow me on X and obviously ask questions there as well, or even on Facebook, Instagram, whatever is easier for you guys. So hopefully this helped you guys out. I know it's a little bit odd one, right? 14 team, 2 quarterback, non-PPR. But again, if someone asks in the community, I would love to always try to get those out there. If you guys do have questions, or if you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and the like button as well. We are going deep into the NFL season, which is super exciting. So we're going to have some start sit videos, waiver wire videos, some great stuff coming out for the season. And I'll check you guys out next time.